A select group of retro gamers like to purchase boxed copies or dual case versions of their PC games, either to look pretty on their shelves or because that's the way they've always done it. Unfortunately, those second-hand transactions over eBay and in-car boot sales don't profit the original developer, but there is an obvious alternative. Players can spend their money digitally on sites like GOG.com and Steam and others and hope that a small sliver of their financial offering goes back to the original developers at some stage, post-transaction thanks to the licensing agreement. But it's not always that easy. Despite the increasing number of DOS games featured in online storefronts, there are still thousands of DOS games that you can't purchase digitally on PC. Here are 10 of the best ones. Number 10. Grand Prix 2. One of the best DOS racing games ever. Jeff Cramond's Grand Prix 2 has the unfortunate distinction of being a licensed game, with real-life names and car companies and manufacturers, and with the original Microprose no longer existing, let alone holding the Formula 1 license, there's absolutely no chance we'll see this classic appearing on any digital storefronts in the future, a fate that applies to so many great DOS sports games. Think of this entry as a catch-all for them. That great sporting title you played back in the day can't be bought and likely never will be. Number 9. Prince of Persia. You can purchase plenty of Prince of Persia games online, but if you want the original rotoscoped Apple II version or the DOS version, you're out of luck. This late 80s effort by Jordan Mechner was ported to every system under the sun, but despite its proliferation, it's nowhere to be found on digital platforms. This might be something to do with the fact that the first 2 games were published by Broderbund, and therefore Ubisoft don't own the rights to release them with the rest of the games. Number 8. One Must Fall 2097. A game published by Epic Mega Games, but not on the Epic launcher and not on GOG, which already has a series of Epic titles like Jill of the Jungle, Jazz Jackrabbit and Epic Pinball. It seems like an absolute no-brainer for Epic to put OMF up on some sort of site to download instead of surviving on abandonware equivalents for the better part of 25 years. Unless it's the creator Rob Elam who remains a stumbling block here, but I sincerely doubt that. Whatever the cause, DOS's greatest fighting game remains unavailable. Number 7. Star Trek: A Final Unity. There are plenty of Star Trek games on storefronts, but most of them share one thing in common. They're the original series. If it's games from the next generation you're after, you won't find many. There are a series of fantastic Star Trek Windows games missing from stores, but the greatest loss in DOS gaming land is A Final Unity, a fully voiced and fantastic point-and-click adventure game by Spectrum Holobyte and the now defunct Microprose, both companies victims of a series of mergers and takeovers that constitutes the cutthroat business world. Number 6. Discworld. Terry Pratchett is one of the greatest authors in history. He was also substantially involved in computing. And by substantially, I mean he was gaming since the early 80s all the way through to helping write mods for Oblivion and Skyrim. So to see the 90s graphical adventures based on his worlds that he also assisted in creating being completely unavailable to modern gamers is unfortunate to say the least. While it would seem a simple matter for someone like Rhianna Pratchett, Terry's daughter and games industry professional in her own right, to sort all these things out, the licensing agreements are apparently a complete mess and nobody knows how it functions. A shame we can't find a real-life Lord Veterinary to make sense of the chaos. Number 5. The Need for Speed. And so we finally come to Electronic Arts. Possibly the worst company for doing this, EA own all the rights for the Need for Speed games, and many other classic titles for that matter. They just choose not to republish them, or so it seems. There are hundreds of great titles languishing in no man's land because EA has decided not to release them. They even have their own digital platform they could do it on, but they don't. The most frustrating aspect of this is that there are plenty of DOS games that EA has allowed to be digitally available, which begs the question to be asked. Why them and not these others? Perhaps the money they'd have to give to certain former developers deters them from doing so. Who knows? It's EA. Number 4. Mech Warrior II. Standing astride the mech genre like, well, a mech of some description, Mech Warrior II is the perfect example of the copyright hell that is the Mech Warrior series. It was developed by Activision using the BattleTech license, and even at that early stage there were reportedly disagreements. which led to the license instead being given to Hasbro after the game's release, and then Microsoft, and then Piranha. So unless Activision were somehow able to reclaim the license or collaborate with Piranha, you're not going to see the classic mech game anytime soon. Number 3. Lemmings. While technically speaking there is a game called Lemmings on mobile, it's not the same as the classic 90s title from DMA Design. There was a terribly ported version on the Windows Store too, but that's no longer available either. Did you know that the people behind Lemmings also made Grand Theft Auto? A natural conclusion. The problem with Lemmings is that it was published by Psygnosis, who were also acquired by Sony in 1993 to help make the PlayStation. They presumably own the rights, and don't seem to care about all the money they're losing by not having the original game on a digital store. Lemmings has sold over 20 million copies. It's like Tetris and Mario in that respect, and is regarded as one of the greatest games of all time. Yet all we've got is a series of botched PlayStation versions and bad mobile conversions. Come on Sony, you can do better than that. Number 2. Dune. Holding a license to not one but two of the most important games in the development of the RTS genre, the Herbert family estate have a history of being exceedingly miserly when it comes to licensing out Frank's work, as in 3 developers and 5 games in the last 30 years, with no Dune games coming out in those last 20 years. This means that you'll never be able to buy a digital version of Dune, Dune 2 or Dune 2000. With a new film on the horizon and Funcom now having the rights to develop video games for it, we'll probably be getting a few movie tie-ins to quench that particular desert drought, but the Westwood and Cryo games are unlikely to see re-release. Number 1. Civilization. The first 2 Civilization games are still seen as the best by many. You can buy the original Colonization from the same era, but there's no sign of Civilization. And I'm not just talking about modern society, I mean there's no sign of the game either. I'd chalk this up to another Microprose situation, but the aforementioned game is from the same studio and same publisher and it's available. 2K are quite happily publishing Civilization games like there's no tomorrow, and even Civilization 3 is available. So what's going on? Civilization 2 is an early Windows title, so compatibility issues might be a stumbling block there. But the original Civilization is for DOS, so it would be easy to release it with DOSBox just like they did with Colonization. Furthermore, this doesn't appear to be a rights issue on the part of 2K, as they published the Civilization series under the name Civilization Chronicles in 2006. As a result of legal wrangling, licensing issues, defunct publishers and estate owners, many of the pioneering works in various genres are unable to be legally purchased in this day and age. Not only are future gamers who don't want to go to the trouble of setting things up missing out on experiencing important pieces of gaming history, there's also a group of former developers missing out on potential digital royalties too. Hopefully in the years to come this will get sorted, but until then we'll have to make do with clean rips and scene rips and emulation.